All right, welcome to Aftershocks Tremors Live number 8. Wow, number 8 already, man. We keep saying it every time we come on here, but it really is flying, man. I can't believe that 2 weeks ago we just did this, but so how you doing, Chris, man? How's everything going?
I'm good, man. It's a great week for us, man. What great interviews we got lined up, and we've been doing great interviews. It's been a good week so far, man.
Yeah, it sure has been. It's been fun. Yeah, we got a great lineup tonight, obviously. Let's talk about who we got coming on. First up tonight, we've got guitar virtuoso Sammy Boller. Many of you out there might know Sammy. He was in a band called Citizen Zero about 4 years ago or so. They had some good radio play, I believe, back then, but obviously they were on Wind Up Records, which was that was like one of the biggest independent labels in the world at one time, and that kind of went downhill. And then I'm assuming that has something to do with the band no longer, I think, being together. So obviously we'll ask Sammy some questions about that, as well as his new record. Is an instrumentalist now. He went from being in a sort of a radio rock band now to being an instrumentalist. So quite the change, between those two scenes or communities, or so we're starting off with him tonight, and then coming up after Sammy, we've got John Connolly from Atlanta hard rock heavyweight Sevendust. They got a new album coming out, man. Obviously Sevendust, man, they've been around. I can't believe it's been like 20
almost 30 years.
Yeah, going on 30 years. That was 97, I believe. Their debut came out, man. Wow, feeling old, man. But yeah, they got a new record coming out. That sounds great. And then, of course, after John, our big guest tonight, we've got Mr. Joey Vera from Armored Saint, and same with them. They got an album coming out this Friday as well. So, got a great show tonight, man.
Dude, it's fantastic. I just love that. We've been doing this not that long, and we're already getting really strong guests, and we haven't had to do that. Well, here's a band that's been around for 3 days, and let's talk to them. It's been really kind of fun to kind of jump in the water, and I think that's probably a tribute to our other shows, being honest.
Sure.
Obviously the CMS has a lot of rep, and so does Skull Sessions. So
sure.
It really has helped us. And for me and you, I think it's fantastic because it really allows us to stretch out as the music fans that we are and really reach deep into our fantasy lineup of people we want to talk to, and actually get them on the StreamYard here and do these video interviews, man. It's been, to me, it's nothing but fun, man. I love it.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting, when we started this, our whole what we wanted to do really was kind of branch away from the classic metal stuff, since both Skull Sessions and CMS are all about classic metal. And then from there, it sort of took on a bit of a life of its own. When we started with there, it was more about, giving some airtime, or just some, interviewing some bands that, a lot of people maybe don't hear from as much. We started off thinking about, we wanted to get into some hardcore bands on, since we didn't do that with other shows. Then we wanted to get some maybe stoner bands on, some doom bands, and we just kind of, it kept going. Now we're all over the place, man. And we like it that way. That's obviously, like you said, we want to. There's a dime a dozen metal podcasts out there, obviously, talking about the same old bands. And so yeah, we want to just do something different, man. So here we are. I'm really like the direction we're going in with. You just did an interesting one last week, Jesse Wagner.
Yeah,
that was different. Obviously, Jesse is a backup singer, I believe, a touring singer with. A lot
Kid
of
Rock and Lenny Kravitz, Duran Duran, and Chick, and she's been in a ton of bands, and it was, dude, I got to tell you, and it was so funny the way this went, because we get these emails all the time from people, and they're like, hey, will you interview so and so or whatnot? And I'm always like, sure, whatever. Well, I saw this one, I listened to the record, and I was like, oh, I love this, and I hit the publicist up immediately. I was like, yeah, we'll have Jesse on, no problem, and the publicist hits me back immediately, knowing me, and is like, dude, she's not metal.
Not even close.
And I was like, yeah, I know, man. I just love this. And even when I got her on, you know, we did our interview, and at the end of the interview, I said to her, I said, see, I actually knew what I was talking about. It wasn't just, you know, it wasn't just a bullshit thing, you know, and she was like, oh, I didn't think you wouldn't know anything. I thought you were going to ask me about like Lamb of God or something, and I wouldn't know anything. So,
yeah.
you know,
No,
it was totally, totally cool, man. And, you know, I love that. You know, one of the things that we have coming up here probably next week, and you know, I shared it with you today, and I don't mind bringing up, even and if it doesn't happen now, it'll just suck for me. But you know, is that we're going to be talking to Leland Sklar, and what a name that! I mean, to the everyday person that's a Motley Crue fan, they might not know who Leland Sklar is, but me and you as music dorks, it's like, oh yeah, you know?
oh yeah. Yeah, when you sent that to me, I was like, wow. I mean, I just remember Leland Sklar, man. I mean, every video I'd watch in the 80s there, I just see this guy playing bass, whether it was Phil Collins or whoever, and just with this long-ass beard. I mean, just a very, very unique looking guy. And I used to always think to myself, man, who is that guy? He's in like every band. I see him on. I mean, he's perfect for MTV too, right? I mean, fit what they were going for. Obviously, someone that stands out, and that, you know. But yeah, it's when you sent that to me, I was really pumped, and hopefully we do get to talk to him sometime next week.
Well,
That'd be fantastic.
I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. And you know, the band, what is that band called? The Immediate Family. It's a band, and if you're any kind of a musicologist, I guess, you probably are aware of a band called the Wrecking Crew from the 60s. And the Wrecking Crew was this collection of just ridiculously talented musicians that played on basically every hit song from the 60s and 70s. Like all of those bands that had success, they hired the Wrecking Crew to come in and play the music, whether it was the R&B bands or the Beach Boys or whoever. They all had this band that played. This Immediate Family band is kind of like that. All of these guys, every guy in this band has like 50 to 100 million sales under their belt. Yeah. And it's like crazy. And they all want to come on. They don't even want us to pick a guy. They said, hey, we'll get the whole band on. Yeah. And I was like, wow. So we're going to probably be doing an interview with like 4 guys that have 250 million album sales. Man. And nuts. And as a dork, I couldn't be happier. 17 hours while I asked, well, what was it like working with? And it's going to be all the same questions I make fun of on the CMS. What was it like? Was that fun? Was that cool? Right? Yeah. Total fanboy dork, but it'll be fun, man.
Yeah, man. That'll be a lot of fun, man. Absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, we got a lot of stuff coming up. But, yeah, so I guess we could get rolling tonight with our first guest. Let's get rolling with our first guest tonight. We've got Detroit guitar virtuoso, Mr. Sammy Boller. Sammy, man, thanks for coming on with us. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on. I'm doing great. Appreciate it. Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, nice to meet you too, man. Well, we're definitely going to, get into talking about your brilliant debut solo record called Kingdom of the Sun that came out just past spring. But before that, why don't you just tell us what you've been up to, since this pandemic started? I mean, I hate asking these pandemic questions in a way. I'm kind of getting sick of them, but it's a reality, right? I mean, we got to do it. But I know you were one of the unfortunate ones, man, who happened to release your record just as this whole menace was starting, correct? If I recall.
Yeah, my record came out about a week before the first lockdown. So it was a little bit crazy, but yeah, it's just one of those things, man. It's been interesting. This is like my first summer home in quite a few years now, so it's been taking some adjusting. Yeah. But it's been all right, man. It's one of those things. Just everybody's in the same boat, and all musicians are just kind of trying to find different ways to perform and just keep going. So I've just been doing a lot of videos, a lot of shows like this. Just having fun.
Yeah, what else can you do, right? This is really it's kind of what you're left with, to do. But no, but thanks for coming on. Are you recording, any So what have you been doing? Obviously, since the pandemic, like you said, you've been doing these, doing videos. You're doing podcasts. Are you recording any new music? Are you going to do any live streams or COVID quarantine cover songs? What you got?
I've done a few live streams so far, especially when it first those first few weeks of quarantine when everybody was online doing the live stream. I did quite a few, and we did a show from the studio. The vinyl version of my album just came out like a month ago, so we did a show from the studio.
Very cool.
About a month ago. Yeah, that was really fun, man. That was really cool doing with the whole band.
Sure.
But yeah, I've been working on new music. I worked as like a session guitar player a lot here in Detroit, so I've been doing a lot of sessions, especially like the past couple months. The studio's been pretty busy, which is cool. But I have a new single coming out in a few weeks, which I'm excited about. We just cut it pretty recently.
Awesome.
And yeah, I'm working on a new record too. So yeah, I think a lot of people right now are just working on music, either writing or finishing albums that maybe they've had on the back burner, or maybe they just haven't had time to finish. So
sure,
it's been fun, man. It's one of those things where you just kind of got to take it one day at a time. But that's being a musician anyway. It's a one day at a time thing. So
yeah, no, true, good point. Well, Kingdom of the Sun, man, it's your your debut solo record. It's a great listen. It's definitely quite a change too for you, going from sort of a traditional 4-piece hard rock band with your old outfit Citizen Zero to now becoming an instrumentalist with your own band. And the first thing I noticed was that the riffs and music overall in your solo band here is much heavier. I mean, you could definitely tell that despite the virtuosity of your playing, you're definitely a metalhead at heart. Am I correct on that?
Thanks a lot, man. Yeah, thanks for checking out the record. Yeah, I definitely grew up a metalhead, man, for sure.
Okay.
And I still am. I listen to a lot of different kinds of music, but yeah, with this, I'd never even attempted to do anything instrumental before. But after I got off the road with my old band, like almost 3 years ago now, I was just kind of looking for something new to do. Like I was kind of burned out on all the stuff I had been playing, So I started to come up with some new melodies and approaches to playing. And once I had a few ideas, I showed them to my friend Steve, who produced the album. He's like, man, you should really, really try to do this. Some of this is really cool. So that's when I kind of came up with the idea of trying to put a band around it and do a full record,
Yeah.
So
cool.
It's fun, man. Whenever you, as a musician, like you mentioned, Leland Sklar, first of all, that's awesome. He's gonna be on the show. That's amazing. He's like a hero of mine. He's awesome. But
yeah,
he's always been changing his whole career, and that's a big thing about being a musician or any type of artist. It's always trying to grow, always trying to find something new. So
sure. Yeah, no. And speaking of change, I mean, the thing about you going now from what you did with Citizen Zero now to being on your own and doing the instrumental circuits is you're now playing to a whole different audience and fan base than sort of the regular, radio rock one you had previously with your old band. I mean, talk about the differences and challenges, going from one, that genre, and then all of a sudden going to the whole instrumentalist community, which is definitely a drastically, I think, different than what you obviously did with Citizen Zero. Much different audience.
It is a different thing for sure.
Yeah.
Like with Citizen Zero, I mean, I always kind of grew up as more of like a band type guitar player, like what made me want to start playing guitar was Van Halen and, the first Ozzy records and, stuff like that, where the guitar playing was, at the forefront, but it was still like with a singer, so for as far as like writing music, with a band, I was always more like a riff guy. And, you think about the vocals, it's like a different type of composition. But as far as like the transition, like before the pandemic started and my band now is playing shows just as a 3-piece instrumental act, it was a really, really fun challenge because trying to make a whole set interesting with just the guitar, and making the guitar the voice of the band. That's a really cool. I just am fascinated by it, and it's been a blast, because there's a little bit more room for like improvisation too, which is cool.
Okay.
But we definitely, I think a goal for us as well was, even though we're instrumental, is to still be able to play with like traditional rock bands, So that's what we were kind of starting to do before, obviously live shows shut down. But yeah, it's fun. It's a blast, man. I really love it so far. I can't wait to get back to playing, man. It's been a bummer. But everybody, that's what everybody's saying. But
right.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I want to expand on that a little bit because certainly I get it in the live setting. In the live setting, using the guitar as the quote unquote voice, you know, opens the door for a lot of improv and a lot of jamming. And, you know, as long as your rhythm section can follow along with you, you know, it makes it kind of easy. The other side of that, though, is I always envision that it's the reason we don't have more guys that do instrumental, you know, solely. I mean, you name off Eric Johnson, Satriani, and Vi, and then you're reaching for guys. You know, after that, there's really not many that do it. I've always thought it's because it's got to be harder to write music that way, to write focused material without a singer to almost follow along with. Is that how it was for you, or is it super easy to write for you?
That's a wonderful question, man. I wouldn't say it's more difficult. I would say it's definitely different, you know. That's one thing I was talking when the record was getting mixed. It was mixed by a guy named David Bendith, who he comes from more of like a radio rock type background too. Sure. Like he's done a lot of he's done like Paramore and Bring Me the Horizon and stuff like that. But he's calm. He's going, dude, I'm getting these mixes done, and I feel like I feel like I'm not done because I'm so used to mixing, you know, like getting the track going and then putting the vocals in, you know.
Right.
But I love it, you know, because it's still like a collaborative thing, you know. Like I'm one of those people where if you're playing with a band, like I like playing with guys that really put their creative input in, you know, just like when you're in a band and you're writing songs, it's like you're working it out, and, you know, the drummer goes, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, you know, and that's kind of like the approach I tried to take with this as well. So really it's the same thing, except when it just comes time for the melody, it's just, I just try to find something that I really love on the guitar, you know, to kind of bring it home, like what a singer would normally do.
Nice. Dude, I love how casually you throw David Bendith in there like he's just another studio guy. You know, meanwhile,
he's awesome, man.
He's his resume, if anybody wants to look up an amazing resume, that guy is amazing. And one of the I actually worked with him briefly, not as a musician because I stink, but as a as a kind of a consultant with a band called Picture Me Broken, which was Brooklyn Allman's band, you know.
Oh wow.
10 years ago, and he produced their album. So I got to chat with him a little bit, and that guy has insight for days, which I'm sure you're aware of. I mean, just listening to him talk about music is fascinating, man. It's for you as a musician and as somebody that's an accomplished musician. I've got to imagine working with somebody like him that has that kind of knowledge, does nothing but help you develop and grow not only individual songs, but, you know, as an artist in general. No?
Big time. Yeah, big time. Dave's like you said, he's so knowledgeable and he was an artist before he became a producer. Like he had some hits in the 70s stuff as a guitar player and yeah, when it came time to, like, when he kind of came into the album was done, and when he came in to mix it, he's awesome, man, because he was like the perfect person to do it, because not only is he a producer and a great mixer, but he's a guitar player too, you know, and a really great guitar player. So yeah, we've just become good friends, man. Like we've worked on a couple things since the album came out together, and yeah, man, he's helped me out a lot. And that's kind of like the role of being even though he didn't produce my album, that is the role of like a producer. Like I'm really lucky. When I was 19 and I started playing with Citizen Zero, they were already working with like one of the best producers in Detroit. His name's Al Sutton.
Okay.
And he owns the studio that I work out now. But he's kind of like a guy in Detroit that's known for like finding young bands. Like he's the guy who discovered Greta Van Fleet initially a few years ago.
Okay.
And when I met him, he did Kid Rock's early record, so he was the one who kind of helped him get off the ground. But as like having a mentor like that, like he's helped me almost more than anybody, just to, you know, teaching me how to record, teaching me how to, no, man, you don't want to do that there. Right. You know, sometimes like little things like that when you're really young, those can make a big difference, you know.
No question, man.
Yeah, and I've seen Dave do that with a lot of artists too, even though I haven't known him as long.
Well, maybe you'll get there. Yeah, I'm sure if you're working with him now, he's going to put his clutches into you a little bit and you know, help you right along, man.
He's awesome, man.
Yeah, he is. Great. Definitely is. Now, Sammy, you know, obviously switching from traditional band to instrumental band, it's not only a change musically. I know that's the easy thing to say is that, okay, well, it's just one less guy and, you know, you just go out and do your thing. But business wise, I imagine anyway, that it's a completely different thing. I would imagine that there's a lot more looking at finding movies or TV scores to get your music into, as opposed to the traditional put out record, find gigs to play, go play shows. Have you A, thought about that, and B, have you been able to do that, or is the pandemic really putting the screws to all of that?
As far as like licensing, I know some of my friends that do that. It's been pretty tough during the pandemic. Like a lot of the stuff is shut down.
Sure.
I think for me, that's a great question too, man. Like the difference between like business wise, just being a solo guitarist compared to, you know, being in like a more traditional band.
Sure.
For me, like I feel really lucky because I learned so much. Like you learn so much from being in a band that's on the road and, you know, like has a record out and gets signed and stuff. Like I feel like a lot of the stuff I learned during those years with my previous band, I kind of try to apply to what I'm doing now, you know, even though it is a different approach where it's like, you know, we're not going to the radio stations at 7 a.m. and singing, you know, after the gig, you know, worn out.
Right.
I definitely am aspiring to kind of do like a hybrid thing where it's like, you know, we still go on the road and we still open up for bands and we still tour. With rock and roll, man, it doesn't matter. You know, instrumentally or whatever, like with rock and roll, you really got to play out all the time, you know, and that's how you get fans, you know?
Sure.
But for me, I think with instrumental music now, a lot of it, at least with guitar, a lot of it's just more online, you know, like on YouTube and Instagram and stuff. So yeah, I feel really lucky. Like I've had since the records come out, I've had some luck with some of that so far. So I'm just trying to keep it rolling. I'm just trying to do everything I can, you know, just from here in Detroit, just from my apartment.
Sure, man. Yeah. You know, I would Sammy, I just want to take you back a little bit to Citizen Zero. Because I really felt that you guys really put out a really solid debut record.
Thanks,
and I know there's virtually, you know, there's been, and no pun intended, there's been zero news out of the camp. I know it's a bad joke, but but some, I mean, for, you know, it looks like pretty much, I guess the band is pretty much done. You know, it just shocked me because, like I said, you guys really did put out a great, you know, record. Did you guys, I mean, did the split happen with you guys? Did it have anything to do with the fact that, you know, Wind Up, you guys were on Wind Up Records, and I know it folded, I believe, pretty much soon right after you guys released that record. Did that have anything to do with, you know, maybe causing, you know, what happened to the band, you know, no longer being around, you know, now?
Yeah, that's a great question too, man. Yeah, we had kind of a tough luck.
Yeah, you did.
Like when you're a young band and you work, like at least in our case, like we worked so hard to finally get a record deal, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're kids and you get a record deal, you think, well, that's it, we did it, you know.
You made it.
Like
yeah.
me and the drummer are celebrating, you know, just hanging out at my, you know. But yeah, unfortunately, like pretty soon after our record came out, they ended up getting pretty much shut down. They were bought out and then ended up folding. So we ended up on like with another record company, which was great, like because we figured, you know, our record cycle just kind of started, so that kind of like allowed us to keep going and tour on the record, you know, which we worked really hard on. We're really proud of, you know, and still am. Like I still am proud of that album for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, after that, it's just like with other business stuff, you know, it's pretty hard. We just had some tough luck, you know.
Yeah.
And just with other stuff, you know, we ended up we were going to do another record with another label, but yeah, we ended up breaking up soon after we had the demos for it. So a lot of it's written, and we do have some pretty good demos. Somebody was asking me about that the other night, like if we ever would consider like putting out some of the demos we had written for the second album, which I would do. I play with the drummer from Citizen Zero all the time, and he's been working with me on some stuff now.
Oh, cool.
We were talking about that, like, man, we'd do it. You know, they're good sounding demos. They're not like, we were still gonna go record it and with a producer and finish it, you know, more like a traditional record. But you never know, man. I think some of it may see the light of day eventually.
Cool, man. Awesome. Yeah. Well, and speaking of, you know, you were talking earlier about the business aspect of now being, you know, an instrumental artist. How's your experience been with a smaller label like you're on now with Candy Rat Records? You know, because I mean, Wind Up was, you know, at one point Wind Up was like considered the largest independent label in the world. You know, when you were you know, I mean, obviously bands like Creed, Evanescence, Finger 11. I mean, those are huge names. Do you find it more to your liking, you know, having a bit more, you know, freedom with your art, like with what you're doing now, compared to having, a bit more, say, financial and tour support, that bands get from a big label like you had on Wind Up. I mean, sometimes too. I stress the word sometimes. That doesn't always happen. But do you enjoy having more of the artistic freedom with what you're doing now, or is it, do you kind of maybe miss or wish you had that sort of also financial and tour support like you probably had with Wind Up?
That's another wonderful question. You guys really know. You guys really do your research, man. It's amazing. It's different. It's definitely different, but I feel really lucky with the label I'm working with now, Candy Rat Records.
Mm-hmm.
It's been amazing. Like it's one of those things where you end up so close to the people that you work with, and they're been so supportive.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel really lucky to like kind of have another crack at it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah, it's been awesome, and I think it's a little bit different now. Like even like you're saying, like with Wind Up, they were definitely like a huge label at one time, and we're still really big toward the end as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think artists still now, as opposed to maybe like 10 years ago or 20 years ago, the artists still have a little bit more control than they used to, I would say, at least in the rock world. Like
Okay.
with Wind Up, they were pretty open-minded to like what they wanted us to do, who we wanted to tour with, stuff like that. That was my experience at least. And I think now since the record industry is changing so much, I think it's that type of approach is more common, I would say.
Okay.
As opposed to like, in the 2000s when they were going, yeah, you're covering this and you're doing that and that.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah,
sure. Definitely.
Yeah.
So Sammy, no one knows what's going to happen. Nobody really knows what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone 6 months from now, a year from now, whatever. As an artist and as somebody that this is your business and not just your hobby, how do you even balance what you're going to do next? I know you're a musician, you write music, you record music. That's only going to sustain you for so long, and it's not going to sustain you financially. It'll sustain the creativity, but how do you temper the waiting game that everybody's in with, actually making a plan that will go next, that you'll go to next,
Yeah, that's a little bit. It's pretty interesting, not being able to plan super far ahead. Like everybody's hoping to go back out on the road next year, but nobody really knows if that's. I'd be surprised. At least early, there's not going to be much going on until later in the year at the earliest, I think. But for me, like I feel really lucky because as a guitar player, there's kind of like a lot of different avenues you can take to make a living. Like I'm really lucky. Like I teach online just from putting music out. I've gotten a lot of students online, so I can spend some time doing that. I spend a lot of time doing session work and playing with other artists, which is really cool. You kind of have to do a lot of different things as a musician. Like if anybody out there that's listening to this and, is aspiring to kind of, do it themselves, that would be my advice. Like no matter how big you get or your band gets or whatever, you'd always kind of have to be looking for different avenues to keep going,
Right.
But yeah, it's just one of those things, I'm like, I live alone. I'm a single guy, so it's a little bit easier, but for some of my friends that have families and stuff, yeah, I mean, you have to always be searching for, what's next.
Right.
But I feel I'm in a pretty good spot now. So
nice. Well, if I was given advice, I'd say don't, because it's
don't get into music.
Yeah, it's way too risky these days, man. And it's just for a million reasons. It just seems like it's such a hard business now. It seems like to get to that point of the reward, it's almost 100% luck now, where back in the day it was maybe 80% luck and 20% talent. It's almost like the talent piece is just kind of dissipated now, and it's just sheer luck.
Yeah, there is such thing as luck. There's quotes. I think Steve Jordan said it. I don't know if you guys, it seems like you guys are big studio guys, so I'm sure you love Steve Jordan. Mm-hmm. He said, luck is when opportunity meets preparation, or when preparation. Mm-hmm. And I think my advice, I get asked that a lot. Like, should I have a backup plan? I really want to be a musician, but should I have a backup plan? And for me, like, I'm somebody who's definitely struggled, you know, has not been the easiest road. You know, being a musician is not the easiest thing in the world. You know, everybody goes through hard times. But I would say you really have to devote your life to it. So I say don't get a backup plan, because that's what you're going to end up with, you know. Being a musician, it's your life, you know. It's not necessarily a choice, you know. It's the way you see the world, you know. So everybody's path is different, and I think a big thing is just listen to your heart and trust trust your gut, you know. And most of the time, if you do that, you'll make the right choices.
There you go. Perfect. Well, Sammy, the new record, it is called Kingdom of the Sun. It's a fantastic listen for anybody that is into A, instrumental music, and B, something with an edge to it. We'll leave it there. It's definitely much more edgy than a lot of the noodle stuff that most people think of when they think of it. So,
it's true.
So, thanks, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on, man. We really appreciate you taking a little time to talk with us here at Aftershocks.
No, thanks for chatting. This is a real honor, man. Thanks for checking out the record and listening to it. It really means a lot. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
all right, appreciate it, guys.
Sammy. All right, take care,
cheers, guys. Thank you.
Take care, man. All right, Sammy Boller.
There goes.
Yeah,
that was good.
Yeah, and like we were saying, with instrumental type of music, both of us were talking about, we don't. I mean, and you made a great point. I was actually thinking that the other day when I was preparing for this interview, was like, if you really think of the instrumentalists out there, I mean, other than, like you said, your Eric Johnsons, your Steve Vais, your Satrianis, there's not that many. I mean, it seemed like it was more of like an 80s type of thing that where it got kind of big in the 80s. But what I gotta say, what I like about, like you just said it right there, it's not your typical noodly, put you to sleep type of instrumental type of music. I mean, it is it's definitely, it's kind of spacey. He's got this very sort of spacey psychedelic almost sound to him when he does the two-handed the finger tapping. But he has those breaks. I mean, and he has some heavy riffs in there. I mean, obviously they're mixed a little bit lighter, obviously in the background. It's not standing out in front of the music, but it's heavy. It's a heavy band, man. So if you, if anyone who's into metal, or I mean, not to be super heavy metal, but just hard rock or good solid, metal. I mean, definitely check that record out, Kingdom of the Sun by Sammy Boller. It's good stuff.
And what's odd about it is it's very different than Citizen Zero.
Yeah, big time. Yeah,
you would own. It's, to me, that's always fascinating. I wish we had more time. We could have asked him about it, but it's always fascinating to me the way these guys change directions.
Yeah,
in a big, like another guy that we've interviewed on the show before that did that in a big way was Tim Narducci from The Watchers. When he was in Systematic, his first band that was signed to Lars from Metallica's label, that was a straight up kind of nu metal band.
Nu metal, totally.
And then he went to Spiral Arms, and then now The Watchers doing, stoner rock.
Yeah.
It's and with that band you had Craig Losacero, who came from the thrash world with Forbidden. And became a stoner rock guitar player, and now he's doing, what would you call what he's doing now? That Dress the Dead,
modern metal, or I guess they would call it female fronted, since they have a female singer, which I think is the stupidest name of a genre. But well, he's been all over the map. I mean, Craig, he was also in Man-Made God, too, and they were a nu metal type of sounding band too. They were part of that whole, but. Like I said, those bands, they just kind of came at the tail end of the nu metal thing. But no, you're right. I mean, that's a good point, But yeah, Tim Narducci, same thing. It's true. And you're right. It is interesting when you see, these musicians, going from one total different sound to another. I think, another guy too that kind of went that route was Dez from Devil Driver. Cole Chambers, same thing, nu metal band, and here comes Devil Driver. First album was sort of nu metal, had a little bit of it. It was that second album, The Fury on Maker's Hand, where it just exploded into like a straight up groove metal thrash band. So
well, and what's interesting is I think that there's actually more talent in these guys that have that ability to play different styles of music, because that's it's really hard. look, I'm a field musician. I know it. And, you know, as a field musician, one of the reasons I was a field musician was because I can only think one way musically. I couldn't think different styles and different speeds and all that other stuff, which as a drummer, made me lousy, you know, and I get it. But the irony is those guys, the guys with the most talent, rarely are the guys that make the success. You know, when you look at look at an AC/DC. I don't think Angus Young has played a different riff since he got a guitar, and it hasn't hurt his success at all. I mean, AC/DC, one of the most successful bands in history, and you can go right down the line with so many of the biggest artists, or maybe not even like the biggest artists, but the ones that have stayed even in the middle of the card but successful. To a guy like Max Cavalera. Max is in how many different bands? You know, he's got Killer Be Killed. He's got Soulfly, Sepultura. He's got
Conspiracy.
Conspiracy. You know, he's always
in something. Yeah.
Musically, all the same.
All the same, no, it's true.
You can put whatever name on it. I think the only reason there's a different name is because there's different players around him. Because musically, it's always the same, and his popularity has never waned. Because he does what. Dude, the guy we just lost a couple weeks ago, Eddie Van Halen. I'm positive Eddie Van Halen could do more than just play straight up, you know, arena rock.
Oh, of course.
But he played straight up arena rock every record, every time, and that kept him at the highest regard of every musician out there.
True. Yeah.
Because he didn't showcase anything that would actually have people questioning him.
True. Well, and I think too, if you're one of those musicians, if you're all over the place all the time, no one knows really who you are. You know, you've got to find your identity, and that's one thing that you know, a guy like Eddie Van Halen did. He found his identity. Like you said, he could have done a whole bunch of different stuff.
Yeah.
But he found what this was his sound. It was what he wanted to play. It was sort of like, you know, like you said, I mean, you have all these musicians that kind of like to, of course, do projects, you know, and I think that's why I think projects are, you know, to me, you know, that's why people do them, because I might not necessarily be in their, you know, sort of wheelhouse. And so it's like, okay, let's just do this project. It won't be a full-time thing. It's
right.
Sort of, you know, situation. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to be interesting. Since both guys jumped in at once. All right. Let's, what do you want to do, Matt? All right, we'll
go and grab someone.
I'm gonna grab John Connolly.
All right,
Joey, hang with us for a bit. You're early, sir. But on with us.
All right.
What's up?
On with us right now is John Connolly, the mighty guitarist of the mighty Sevendust. How are you, man?
What's up, John?
Good, man. How are you guys?
Doing great, man. Well, first off, happy birthday. We found out that this is your birthday today.
Thanks.
So thanks. Yeah, thanks for taking some time to come on with us tonight. You know, talk to us. Really appreciate it. Well, let's obviously get right into it, man. You guys are getting ready to release your new album, Blood and Stone. It comes out in just a couple of days on October 23rd on Rise Records, and this is a damn good record, man. I mean, I love the title track. I think it's a great song. That's the one that really sticks out to me because I really also do like what it represents, which, you know, I read is pretty much about, you know, the band and what you guys have endured over the years and how you had to go through what you had to go through to get to where you are today, and that you have no plans on stopping anytime soon. And, you know, having to endure releasing a new album in the middle of a pandemic is, of course, something that's brand new to everybody right now, right? I mean, regardless of how long you've been together. So, I mean, just talk a bit about, I guess, some of the obstacles you guys had to face with releasing this record. And, you know, I mean, did you guys have this all set up and done before the pandemic happened, or?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, we hit the studio. I think it was the beginning of October 2019, and we were finished right around Thanksgiving, and then we mixed early December. So this was all pretty much sort of, you know, sitting in the can. The only thing that we really had to kind of, you know, work on and tweak was artwork and then a release schedule. Okay. And the artwork came kind of quick, and the release schedule got hit. We hit the pause button, like, I don't know, 30 times.
Oh, wow.
All right, we think we're going to get a record out now. And then March came around, and it was like, all right, well, wait a minute. All the tours are going away. All the shows are going away. So it was a weird situation for us to be in because nothing about the pandemic really had an effect on what we actually created as far as the music and the lyrics and all that stuff. The subject matter and the record was finished, but it was just a strange place to be in because it was like, how do you release a record without a tour?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we're all learning how to do that this year. I mean, we're not in by any stretch of the imagination are we in a unique situation. The whole music business is in the same spot. So we're all kind of learning as we go through this. So it was just a lot of communication with Rise and our management and just, kind of looking at data, looking at what other people had done that might have worked, and then just kind of taking a leap of faith because we really don't know. But it was like, all right, we played our last electric show. I think it was like August, September of 2019. So we're over a year from playing an electric show, which is one of the longest stretches we've ever had. We've been a band for over 25 years, and this is the longest time off that we've ever had. So for us, it was like, we got to get this music out, at least get it out and then just hope for the best. A tour will come when the tour can, when we can figure out a good, safe way to go about doing it.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt. Well, you guys recorded this. I mean, this was produced once again by the great producer you guys have been using on your last two records, Elvis Basquet. Who's also did, like I said, he did All I See as well. What's so special about working with him and that Studio Barbosa that makes really him that go-to guy for you guys? Because I believe you did your solo record was also done by him as well, correct?
We've actually had a relationship with him going back. The first record that I worked on him with was in 2012. We did the first Projected record. He mixed it because of his relationship with the Alter Bridge Camp. I mean, he'd been working with the Alter Bridge guys for a while, and Scott Phillips, who's in Alter Bridge, is also in Projected. So he was like, well, Elvis is here local. Why don't we just get him to mix the record? And it was a great idea because I don't really know how to mix a record yet. I was like, all right, this is sort of our insurance policy, to make sure that I don't completely screw this thing up. But we followed up and had an opportunity to work on him with All I See Is War. Clint did his solo record with Elvis, and then we did this record. And I just finished up in July the third Projected record. So we've done quite a bit of work with Elvis, and I think two things kind of stick out. Number one is an obvious for me. He's local. He's here. He literally lives 10 minutes up the road from us. So
okay.
When we're on lockdown in a pandemic, and I'm like, all right, Alter Bridge isn't touring, and Sevendust isn't touring, and Tremonti isn't touring, and Vinny was going to come down and go fishing anyway. So I was like, let's just go make a record.
Nice.
So we gave ourselves about a month to pull all the demos together. He had the opening, and we figured, all right, we're never going to get another opportunity like this again. So let's shoot in there and make a record. So for us, I think or at least for me, the proximity is like, it's number one. It's so easy, but not too distant. Second place for him is he's just a phenomenal producer. He's a great engineer. He makes stuff sound good, but he's such a good songwriter. He's such a good singer and guitar player that there's never a shortage of ideas that are going to come out of him. And he's not afraid to tell us, both as a fan of the band and as just friends, for as long as we've been friends, he'll tell us straight up, man, it's not good enough. It needs to be better. Sometimes it's not easy to hear, but
sure,
as an artist, you're like, okay, well, he's looking at the big picture here. He's looking at everything. I'm looking at, I'm very, very focused in on one spot, and he's looking at the whole thing going, it's not worthy of the record.
Yeah.
You can do better, and you're like, all right, well, is he challenging me? Because if he is, it's working, because now my,
it's in your head.
Everything.
Yeah.
He's just one of those guys who gets in there and he gets his hands dirty. He's never going to have a shortage of ideas. And he's one of those guys that I try to explain it to people that, they're like, what's his process? I'm like, every note from every instrument gets its day in court. It goes under the microscope. Every fill, every nuance of every single bit of that record gets hyper focused on. And we have a discussion, we deliberate over, different versions of how to do that particular thing. And then we move on. So it's a cool spot to be in, because nothing gets left. Nothing gets left out. Like everything gets covered, every single piece of that record. And some people might look at it and say, well, maybe you're overanalyzing, but not really, because it's like sometimes, you know, a drum fill, it may not seem like it's significant until you listen back to the song and you go, it's a totally different vibe having that fill be the way that it ended up being. And it's those little things. I think it's all the, you know, it's the sum of the parts. You know, if you can make each individual little piece as special and as unique and as cool as it can be, I think the sum of everything that you know, that you end up with, it's just better, you know? So we have faith in him as a fan and as a producer to be able to tell us, hey man, this sucks. Come on, man, you guys could do better than this, you know? And that's why we love it. You know, it's like there's no sugarcoating. He's not going to tell us what he thinks that we need to hear. He's just going to be honest. He's just going to be like, no, man, this is, you know, and if he tells you something is really good, he believes that too. So I think that's why we kind of keep going back to him. There's no more getting to know you. We understand his process. He understands our process. And it's just a great relationship, you know. But I can't understate the fact that he can make his own records on his own by himself and have no problem at all. As far as a songwriter and a singer and a guitar player goes, he's you know, he's one of those dudes who I lean on a lot. You know, it's like, all right, you get it. You get the big picture here.
Yeah. Is that one of the reasons you guys, because I know before All I See Is Warford, I think the previous 3 records, you guys were producing your own, those records. Was it because of him that made you, or is it because of you? Did you feel like you needed someone to tell you like, hey, this sucks or this is great or whatever? Is that why you went back to getting a producer, someone like Elvis?
I think a little bit, you know, I think you kind of go into, you know, when we first started as a band, we really didn't know what kind of a band we were. We didn't know what we were doing. So you kind of go through the motions of trying to figure it out. And then, you know, you work with different producers, you kind of see how stuff goes in the studio. So you get a little bit more comfortable, you get confident. And then you get to the point where you start producing on your own, which we had done back in, the first time we did it was 2005. We did Next, Alpha, and then Hope and Sorrow. And it was a cool experiment to do it that way, to be able to have most of the, you know, I mean, Sean Grove was, you know, our engineer, producer, and he definitely helped us, you know, steer the ship. But for the most part, we were making a lot of the calls on the demos and how to structure the song and the lyrical content and stuff like that. I think when we got Clint first back in, we wanted to make sure that we had someone to kind of help us go back through the process again.
Okay.
But then we realized we hadn't really done that whole self-production thing with Clint. So we figured, all right, you know, we're all pretty strong-minded and, you know, we kind of have our opinions and our viewpoints and stuff like that. And we're all very, you know, opinionated especially when it comes to making Sevendust music. So we figured, let's take it into the studio again and see what happens. You know, Blackout the Sun was one of those records where it was like, we literally didn't bring any demos in. It was one of those things where we had a handful, but every day we went in and we created on the spot. So it was like Christmas because you really didn't know what you were going to get. You know, you may go in there going, okay, today we're going to write, what kind of a song are we going to write? What tune are we going to be in? You know, who's going to play the first thing that's going to instigate or start the process of the song? You know, sometimes it'd be Morgan just playing a drum beat and us going, oh, that's cool, and start, you know, jamming out on it. Or it could be Clint just sitting over there riffing and we'd be like, all right, let's dive into that. But I think it was a cool process for us to actually do it with him, to understand that we can do this. But at the same time, there's also something very special about having that outside perspective, someone who is a fan and someone who, you know, obviously when Elvis produces something, he wants to put a stamp on it, make it as good as possible from a producer's perspective. But it's always cool to have someone who can be in there to give you a little bit of sense of, you know, perspective, you know, objectivity. Sometimes when you're in demo mode, you get so into the demo. I call it demoitis. You know, you can listen to something so many times that you've convinced yourself it's the best thing ever. And then you play it for the rest of your band and they're all going, yeah, it's pretty cool, which means it sucks. And play it ever again. And then, you know, you're kind of shell shocked because you're like, oh man, I spent all this time on this. But having that guy who can just tell you straight out of the gate, you know, without me listening to it 1,000 times, I'd play something for him and it'd be like, It's pretty cool. It's not great. All right, cool. You play him the next thing. I love this.
Right.
Okay. I never would have thought he would have picked that. So you put a star by that, put it over in this folder. I think he makes the process a little more efficient because he can kind of reel it all in. You know, sometimes when we're in that mode, you know, Clint will be super, super focused on this. I'm super focused on this. Morgan and LJ are super focused on something else. And I think Elvis can kind of spend time going around, looking at the board going, all right, you know, within about 10 days, he's like, I think I know what the record is.
Right.
I'm sitting there going, great. You know, because I have no clue. I'm sitting here looking at 50 songs going, I don't know, man. I mean, all these could be cool, but he can kind of cut to the chase and he can get through it a little bit quicker. So there's an efficiency in the process that I think having an outside producer in that spot definitely helps. Sometimes we're our own worst enemy when we're self-producing because we'll take a perfectly good song and we'll just deconstruct it. You know, we'll get it to the point where it should be left alone. And most producers would be like, stop messing around with it.
Right.
Messing around with it. And all of a sudden it's like, all right, we end up working on something else.
You lose it. Yeah.
You lose it. Yeah. So having someone like that in that spot for us, I think it's just, it's always going to be an advantage to having that six, you know, with five of us having strong opinions, having that one guy who can have those opinions as well.
No question. Now, John, this is where I'm going to sound fanboy, and you can tell me I'm full of shit because this is going to sound very fanboy. But listening to this record, which I have about 300 times now, love it. But it's very Seasons or Animosity in vibe. It almost like you guys purposely kind of revisited the most successful albums for direction. Is that accurate, or is it just this is the way you wrote this time?
I think it's just the way that we wrote, but it was funny because someone asked me what it sounded like. You know, someone was like, does it sound like Kill the Flaw? Does it sound like the first album? Does it sound like Black Out the Sun? And I told him, I said, it almost sounds like it belongs in like 2002, almost 2003, like right in between Animosity and Seasons.
Right.
But it was just because of the music that was there. And it wasn't intentional. It wasn't like we sat down and we said, we're going to make the most melodic record, or we're going to write the most radio-oriented songs, or we're going to make the heaviest record. We just kind of brought songs to the table, and the best demos rose to the top. And it definitely sounded like almost a throwback to somewhere between those two records. I mean, I hear a lot of people saying there's definitely an Animosity element and there's definitely a Seasons element. And it wasn't intentional. It was just, I think those two records in some ways was us. We had finally figured out kind of what kind of a band we really were. You know, the first album is always just an experiment to see if we can actually pull it off. And then the second record is that sophomore, you either have the sophomore slump or you go past it. And we survived. So I think when we finally had gotten to Animosity, it was like, all right, take a deep breath. We've gotten over the hump. We can kind of just do whatever we really want to do. And I think Seasons was kind of the next progression with that. Maybe a little bit more melodic because we were working with Butch Walker. So there's always going to be, you know, that type of an element, a little bit more of a pop sensibility going with what we're all about. But we love that. I mean, I'm not going to lie. You know, I'm a huge 21 Pilots fan, Billie Eilish fan. So I don't shy away from any time someone's going to bring that to the table. Elvis does that too. You know, Elvis definitely has a pop sensibility about how he goes about his song structure and his writing. So I think it was just a very unique time and place where it all just kind of happened, and it sounded like a long time ago.
Right.
You know, it definitely wasn't intentional. We didn't sit down and say, all right, we need to write another Seasons or another Animosity. But I think that's kind of the hybrid that we ended up with, something in that vein for sure.
Sure. And you know, as a fan, and again, as a fan, but it seemed to me like from Next through Black Out the Sun was almost like the experimental time. And I know that's a big swath of time, but to me, that always felt like the most experimental time for the band because you guys really tried some different things, not only in recording, but also live shows. I mean, I saw you guys playing with like Emery and bands like that at one point.
Yeah.
Very different than, you know, a lot of your career. do you feel like maybe some of that time was experimental, where maybe you're kind of pulling yourself back to what you do the best?
I think so. I think, at 2005 was sort of that, all right, let's just throw it up in the air and see if it's going to stick, because, with Clint stepping out, it was a major, it's like, talk about the elephant in the room. It was like, all right, can we still sound like Sevendust with a slightly different chemistry? And I think that record for us was just more of a trial by fire. We didn't have a record deal. We were finally away from TVT Records.
Right.
And Clint stepped out to do Call Me No One. So, for us, it was like, all right, we're just trying to prove that it's still viable. And we didn't even know. I mean, it took us to get through the demo stage and actually take it into the house. We recorded in a house, which was the first time we ever did that. But when we survived that record and got the deal with Alpha, I remember it was a quick conversation. I think I had like a, maybe a 15, 20-minute phone call with Morgan. And we were just talking about ideas. And I was, he was asking me, he was like, what kind of demos do you have? And I was like, man, everything's heavy. It's like really, really heavy.
Right.
Like, let's just make a real heavy record. Let's not go crazy on the programming. Let's just get in there and bang it out. And I went, okay, sweet. So that was kind of the idea and the goal behind that. With Hope and Sorrow, there was no rhyme or reason. It was kind of like anything goes. We wanted to try not to take priority away from choruses, but, just kind of mix it up to the point where, maybe the hook in the song could be the bridge. Maybe the hook in the song could be the verse. Maybe they could all be hooks. Maybe none of them are hooks. So we kind of let go of the steering wheel and just said, well, we're not real sure where this is going to end up. And then on Call Me No One, bringing Clint back, it was sort of like, okay, now that we have the original 5 back, let's sort of get back to business, but let's do something a little bit different from the norm. So I think with that record, we kind of took two slightly, well, I don't know. I mean, it was way different, because I think like half of that record is really, really heavy. And then the other half of that record is super, super melodic.
Sure.
Like maybe almost more radio. Like Unraveling is probably about as radio as we've ever chosen to go.
Mm-hmm.
But a song like Splinter or a song like Strong Arm Broken could be arguably some of the heaviest stuff that we've ever done too. Mm-hmm. So, I think even all the way up to Kill the Flaw, Kill the Flaw, we got super technical with some of the stuff. There were some things that we were listening to that we were like, you know what, maybe we can tap into some of this. And, maybe there's an element of that with Sevendust. And then you do Time Travelers and Bonfires, which is all acoustic.
Right.
So like completely stripped down and like different arrangements, same song done a different way and all that stuff. But I think on this one, it was like, I think we sort of gotten the Joneses out of trying this and trying that and finding out what works in Sevendust and what doesn't. And on this record, it was more of a, if it fits, great. If it doesn't, that's cool too. But most of the stuff just was super cohesive, even from the beginning. It was
right.
Like, this is one of the few records that we really didn't, there wasn't a lot of like arguments and like, there wasn't a lot of angst during the demo stage, this demo versus this demo. It all just seemed to kind of line up. And then when Elvis started, picking the songs, we all just gave him a thumbs up. And he was like, that's it. We're cool. And I'm like, yeah,
nice.
I love it. I'm looking at it, thinking about it, getting excited. And I was like, yeah, okay. So in a lot of ways, I think it just went in. We were super relaxed. I mean, obviously we wrote a lot, but there was just a different mindset. I think mentally we were in a slightly different spot, just because we were in mostly a good place.
Right.
We had just come off a really, really successful tour. We had a good time doing the tour. We had some significant time off to be able to kind of unplug, get with the families, spend some time writing. And then when we hop in the studio, I mean, I'm not going to lie, when you hop in the studio in Butler, New Jersey in February during the middle of a blizzard, you have a different mindset than when you hop in the studio in October in Orlando, Florida, where it's 78 degrees.
Right.
Yeah.
you could just go to Disney World or Epcot or, cruise around, play golf, so it's like just the mood was a little bit different.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think we definitely tried to experiment a lot during those middle records and those middle years. And it's not to say that we didn't want to step outside the box. There was quite a bit of experimenting on this record.
Sure.
But it's a little bit more hidden. Like I think we were a little smarter about hiding the fact that like some of the songs started on piano.
Okay.
a lot of people were like, what? And I even embraced the guys that said, just so you know, I was in the process of moving, or I thought I was moving, and we had all of our stuff packed up in pods. So all I had here in my studio was my daughter's keyboard. So I was like, let's see how this goes. I'm gonna throw a couple guitar parts on there and see what'll end up happening. But yeah, I mean, we stepped outside the box a little bit, but I think at the end of the day, it was all just, what's going to make the most sense melodically for Sevendust.
No doubt.
And once LJ sings on it, puts his stamp on it, that's what makes it Sevendust.
Sure. Now you mentioned LJ, and he's obviously preparing a solo record, and certainly you've all done things outside of Sevendust, except for him at this point, other than like one song. Now, I'm not trying to start any kind of trouble here. I'm just asking the question: is that in any way scary for a band when your singer takes that step? And I'll point to like an Aaron Lewis, I'll point to like a Darius Rucker from Hootie and the Blowfish, stepped out, found unbelievably big success away from what they were known from. Do you guys worry about that at all, or do you think there's no way that could happen?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. There's always that thought in the back of your mind. I mean, it's kind of the same way with. I mean, Morgan's got an EP coming out. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. He's got an EP coming out. It's either going to be later this year or early next year. Okay. I mean, we were all kind of looking at the pandemic as being like, okay, this is a curse on one hand, but it's a huge gift on the other hand, because if you wanted time to clear the schedule to actually get some music together, this is the time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So. Elvis had done the stuff with Clint. Clint has his solo record. There's always that thought in the back of your mind when any of us do anything, whether it be Projected, the Clint stuff with Morgan. But I think with LJ, it's always a little unique when your singer finally takes that step, because he is the voice and the face of the band. Right. I mean, as much as we put our heart and soul into everything that we do outside of Sevendust, we're still, pieces of a bigger picture. And 90% of the time, they're going to be focused on LJ when we do a Sevendust show.
Right.
They'll drift over and watch Morgan and check out what Clint's doing, but then they're back and they're listening to LJ and they're super focused on him. So I think for us, in all honesty, with him doing the solo record, it's always a little scary, to think, oh, what happens if he goes out there and comes, the biggest thing ever? And if that happens, that's awesome. But I think there's more of an excitement around our camp about him actually getting all this together, because it's been a process. He's been working on this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not going to get it out until he's ready. But yeah, I mean, I'm super stoked for him, man. I mean, I can't wait to hear it. I want him to have that thing. I want him to have that other thing out of Sevendust. I think in some ways it's sort of it's a weird spot to be in, because part of me takes that James Hetfield mentality where you want Sevendust to be the only thing that you do.
Sure.
You want to be able to make like that's it. That's where it starts and it stops. But I think as musicians, I think each one of us, we agree when we're in Sevendust on how Sevendust should sound and how those songs should flow and how the album should actually be put together. But each one of us has very unique visions on where we see other types of music, and that's why we kind of take these outlets to be able to do these other things. But yeah, for LJ, man, I'm just thrilled about the fact that it's actually coming together, and at some point he's actually going to get this out. Cool. And hey, man, if we end up, getting pitched to the curb because he's the next, they're like, hey, man, I'll be calling up, going, can I get some tickets or something, man? Can I get some backstage?
Right.
Awesome. Well, hey, John, I know you got to go here real quickly. I just had to ask you one thing while you're on.
Sure.
I'm going to take you down a trip down memory lane. I've got to bring up a band that you were in back in the early 90s. It was a record. I had this record too, Peace Dogs.
Oh, wow.
X is for Eyes, man.
Yeah.
I remember I loved that. I mean, the song Death Chant, I still love that song. I mean, that was a really cool record. I was interested, it was that Energy Records label that was out back then in the early 90s, right? Yeah.
Was on there, which was Wrath Child America. Propane was on there.
Yeah, Propane and MOD and yeah, all those. It was a cool little label. And so talk a bit about that first experience in the music industry that you had with Energy. I mean, what did it prepare you for, if anything, really? Because it was it was interesting time. And obviously when you got Sevendust, when you guys got signed by TVT, that was probably about 4 or 5 years later. What did you pick up from that first experience, if anything at all, from Energy?
I mean, how to exist in the van tour with Propane is
the
thing that I probably remember the most. I mean, we literally had 2 bands and crew in 1 van. And, just being able to survive that, you really get to appreciate a bus. Having a coffee maker and a bathroom where you can, actually just take a leak or whatever. But the whole process with the Peace Dog things was, it was an awesome experience because it was our first rip at it, first time in a real studio, first time working with a real producer. It was Alex Perialis who produced that. Just being around that environment was just kind of like, sometimes you're pinching yourself going, is this really happening? Because it was like, everyone wants to get signed, but I don't think you realize that it actually happened until way after the fact. You're sort of out on tour and you're looking around going, wait a minute. Is this real life? Like, did this actually happen? Like, hang on a second. We're on tour. We're actually going. We're going to be playing a show, in a few hours to, people we've never played before in a state we've never played before. So, that Peace Dogs experience for me was super valuable just because it was a first crack at it. And that record was a cool record. It was like, it was one of those records that it just didn't fit in anywhere. It was like, it was somewhere stuck between, Jane's Addiction and, the Cult and sort of a Metallica kind of a thing, but not really because, people had a real hard time figuring out what kind of a band we were.
What was that in the early 90s, with the grunge? It was big and metal. So it was sort of, it was a very interesting time. Yeah.
We were like, we were related to grunge, but we weren't like full on grunge.
No. Yeah.
We were still kind of loosely somewhere else. So, for us, I think we all, it was definitely an experience that was a great learning experience because by the time we hit the studio with Sevendust, other than the fact that I was on a completely different instrument.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Completely different to talk about. But other than that, it was like, all right, we'd already been in the studio experience. There's always that weirdness the first time you go in there. The first time you go in, you're like, all right, we're recording. This is actually going down like history forever. Wait a minute, hang on. I didn't do it good enough. Let's do it again. So yeah, doing that whole Peace Dogs record was a good rip at it. And it taught me personally a lot about the business that I just didn't understand. A lot of people think you just get signed, you go out on tour, your manager handles everything, and then that's the end of it. But I think going through that process, learning a good bit about the business side of it has nothing to do with the art. The art's one thing, the lyrics are one thing, the melodies are another thing, and then how you actually operate as a business is a completely different thing. Because you almost have to take all that art and say, okay, now it's a product. Now we have to figure out how to sell it. So watching how actually that worked and came together, it definitely helped going into the Sevendust stuff. Because let's call a spade a spade. Back from 92 to now, the business has changed. It's never stopped changing. We came from a time when we were passing out cassettes. Vinyl, you couldn't find vinyl. Nobody wanted vinyl. It was all about cassettes and then CDs. And then all of a sudden, everyone wants to stream and they want vinyl again. So I'm like, wait a second, it's 30 years later. Vinyl's a thing. Like, what's going on here? This is kind of cool. I go into my daughter's room and she's got all the vinyl that I had when I was in high school. She's got bands. She's listening to Soundgarden and Nirvana. And I'm like, what is happening? My mom's looking at me going, this has come full circle. And I'm like, yeah, it has. It's crazy.
So what you're saying is the next Sevendust release will be on 8-track.
I guess so.
Yeah, right.
Might as well,
right? Awesome. Well, hey, John, go ahead and enjoy your birthday, man. Thanks so much for coming on. Really do appreciate it. And we look forward to, the record coming out in 2 days, October 23rd, Blood and Stone. Everyone should pick up a copy. And once again, thanks a lot for talking to us. Appreciate it.
You guys, man. Y'all have a good
All right. Take care. You too. Take care, John.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right.
Connolly?
Yes.
Man. And let's just move right along here. Things are happening here.
Oh, they are.
Vera from Armored Saint, of course. Armored Saint has a brand new release.
Hi.
Called Punch the Sky. And Joey, welcome to Aftershocks, man.
Thank you for having me. It's glad to be here.
Sorry about the confusion, man. It was like literally you and Connolly popped up at the exact same time. And I was like, oh shit.
I was actually just trying to see, I was in a different part of my house and I was going to see what the connection was like. And it was pretty bad. So the audio was just cutting in and out. So I said, all right, the hell with it. And I hung up and came over someplace else. I was just checking
Oh, okay.
No, I was trying to crash the party. Actually, let's be frank.
Awesome. Well, Joey, obviously, man, you have this great new release, Armored Saint, Punch in the Sky. It is, well, I'm just gonna say it. It's Armored Saint, and that's about all you need to say. You don't really need to say it's better than this or worse than this or anything. Armored Saint is Armored Saint. You guys are 35 years of consistency, man, which as a fan makes it so welcoming just to get Armored Saint music.
That's great to hear. I mean, we have been doing this a long time, and the fact that we hear comments like that is cool for us. We've been spending our whole career kind of trying to create what our sound is, and for the longest time we don't think we really knew what it was. So we're stoked on this new record. We feel really proud about the songwriting and the production and the performances and everything. So, it's funny with our records. Each one is a little different than the one that came before it, just a little bit. But, and so this one's really no exception in that case. But we're super stoked on it.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned the production, and I wanted to bring that up right off the bat, because that's, if there's anything that is a, I don't want to say a major change, but a strong improvement from the last release, it is the production. And I don't know if it's just you've gotten better as a production guy, or the people you're working with have gotten better, but the sound is just arena sounding, man. It's a big sound that comes out, that blows the headphones off of your head, man. It's fantastic.
That's great. I was going for something a little wetter and bigger, more epic sounding. It's funny you mentioned that, because I actually on purpose went to work with the same exact people we worked on with Win Hands Down. Okay. So Josh Newell recorded the drums with us. Bill Matoria did the guitars. And then in the end, I did some recording with John Bush, the singer, here at my studio. But and then in the end, Jay Rustin mixed it, and Jay Rustin mixed Win Hands Down as well. So the only thing I really kind of gave Jay a hint on was what I just told you, that kind of want it to be a little wetter and a little, I don't know, bigger, kind of, if you will. And so Jay knocked it out of the park. It sounds epic. And, I probably went maybe a little overboard with the overdubs and the production value, special effects, and just there's tons of parts, and it's just layers and layers. And sometimes it's just a wall of sound, and that was done on purpose. So yeah, I mean, we're stoked with this record.
Yeah. No, Joe, what I really like about it, we interviewed John about a month ago or so, and to me, it's definitely, I think, a little more, straightforward and no nonsense sort of meat and potatoes sort of Armored Saint. I mean, it's got, I think, more catchier, vocals and hooks, and maybe it's just me getting older, and preferring simpler things in general, but I really do enjoy sort of that simpler and more, catchy approach that you have kind of going on this record. I mean, are you guys as a band now, are you at a place, now in your career where you feel like maybe, you've experimented obviously a lot over your career. Do you feel like you've experimented enough, to show the listeners and fans what you can do as a band, both sonically and technically? And now maybe you just want to kind of get down to the bare bones and play some sort of straightforward metal and sort of simplify things a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that each time we go to write, I always look at it as this kind of like this, grand experiment. You know, what can we do this time that we didn't do last time, and how can we, you know, how can I put the knowledge that I gained over the last 5 years into this new record? So I'm always challenging myself in that way. So, you know, going into it, it wasn't a conscious thing that John and I talked about, but it was something that was kind of subconscious within me, was that I wanted to see if I could make another record that was huge and epic, but can I do it with less? Can I do it with shorter songs? Can I do it with, you know, simpler arrangements, you know, simpler parts, and really leave a really great open canvas for John to shine, because John sounds amazing on this record.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was part of my goal as well, was to make sure that he had a great place to totally shine and let him be melodic and simple too. So yeah, part of it is you're right with part of it. Like I say partly because we don't really go into these things with a real agenda. John and I don't talk about very much about what we're going to do, songwriting, what style or direction or any of that stuff. We really want it to be genuine and natural and organic. So we really don't talk about things that much. We just kind of like, I put some things out there and see what his feedback is, and then we just start letting the ball roll, and the end result are these songs.
Yeah, no, they're great, man. And you know, one thing you guys obviously continue to do on this record, as you have throughout your whole career, is you added a lot of those unique sounds and instrumentation to the music that the band is, you know, obviously well known for. I mean, I know the record starts off with that Celtic Ilian pipes that you got on Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. You've got some Indian flute on there. You got, you know, the marching snare drum. I mean, so I think it's great you guys continue to, you know, obviously add those different elements, because it almost wouldn't be, I think, an Armored Saint record without it, you know?
That's funny. I never really thought of it that way. But I guess I see your point. You know, to be honest with you, it's not a formulaic thing with me anyway. It's more like, I think we first really tapped into it on Tribal Dance on Symbol of Salvation, right, with that intro. And so that was really the kind of the first major leap into like having other world instruments mixed in with what we do. And you know, as fans of music, all band members, I can safely say that we all listen to a lot of different kinds of music. So we have influences that are pretty wide ranging. So any opportunity to bring in other influences or things that we like, we're all about that, you know. And I just think it adds a really cool, unique flair to something that might otherwise be a little ordinary, you know.
Sure, yeah. You know, and going just quickly too back to, you know, Chris brought up before about, you know, the production and you being a producer. I mean, that's obviously one of the most consistent things that, you know, it's been going on with the band since you got back together in 2000s. You've produced, you know, all the records. I mean, do you feel any pressure, you know, or, you know, just for the fact that if things, you know, if the band members, rest of the guys are like, you know, not happy with certain things, you feel sort of that pressure that, you know, if it doesn't work out that way where everyone is, you know, really liking what's going on, that, you know, now all of a sudden sort of the fingers pointed at you as the guy who maybe didn't do what, you know, everyone was hoping you do. I mean,
he didn't do his job right.
Yeah, it's pretty much.
He failed. You let us down. Yeah, I mean, of course, that there's a pressure there. You know, I'm representing the band. I'm not just representing me. You know, it's the name Armored Saint. So I don't take it lightly at all. I am, you know, the guys will tell you that I can be stubborn and I can be, you know, bullheaded when I have something in my mind and I want it to be that way. But I'm also smart enough, I think, to be able to step back every now and then and say, hey, I need help with this, you know, like I'm not 100% sure. What do you guys think? You know? So I think that's probably one of my strengths, is I'm able to step outside quite often and take an objective look at everything. But yeah, I do feel, you know, it's just weird. this thing, this pressure, it is there, but it's something that I really thrive on. I must be like a masochist or something, because I like the pressure. I love the challenge. I sort of view producing and engineering, even to some extent, as troubleshooting, you know, trying to whittle away at, you know, you have a set goal in the end, and you just get rid of all the blockades in order to get there. So I love that kind of stuff. It's like a puzzle, you know.
Right.
So I find it really challenging. And, you know, I think I've gotten better over the years too, you know, just with doing it. You learn from people you work with and just by experience.
Right. Sure. Definitely. Now, Joey, I watched the live stream show from, was that last week? I guess it was. And I got to tell you, musically, it felt like you guys had been on tour for 6 months. You guys just seemed like you were right in the pocket, and it was just pounding. It was fantastic. The times in between songs felt very awkward, and John clearly felt like he didn't know what to do. You know, what was that like for you guys to play in such a strange environment without fans? Because I'm assuming that's the first time, other than in the rehearsal room, you've ever done that.
Well, and there's been a few shows in our career, mind you, on tour, where we've had the same amount of people in the venue. We've had a few stinkers along the way. So it's reminiscent of those times. But not too many, but, you know, it's happened.
Right.
But yeah, it was weird at first. You know, we went into it not really knowing what exactly to expect, but our mindset was we rehearsed pretty well. We rehearsed like 5 days before, and hammered out everything. And we just kind of went in there, and I said to the guys, I go, let's just have fun, you know, let's just play like we're in rehearsal and just have a good time, play the songs, and play to the cameras if you want, you know, like those are eyes, you know, the eyes are people all over the world, but the cameras are the eyes. So play to them, you know. I think it took a few songs for us to kind of like get comfortable. But, you know, by the third or fourth song, I think we were sweating, and we were, you know, feeling good and just having fun with the tunes. And it was really fun playing 4 brand new songs. Because, you know, we're stoked on the new record, so we wanted to play new material. That was great. And, you know, John and I had talked about this before we went on, and I said, he's like, I don't know what I'm going to say. And I said, just, you know, just be you, you know, just do your thing, you know. And I thought he was pretty good, you know. I mean, the weirdest thing is when the song ends, and then it's like, you're falling off a cliff. Like,
right.
It's just nothing, zero. It's not a sound. It's a very weird feeling. But you know, I think he kind of lightened up at times, and that's why we, like, you know, I thought that his raps they got better as the night went on, and he started to just get comfortable. And I think in his frame of mind, he was like, I'm just going to talk to people like the way that I talk to them when I'm on stage. And the weird thing for him was that there was no set of eyes looking back at him. He couldn't make any eye contact, but he was just trying to be like, you know, what he would say if someone was there. And, you know, it was awkward.
Yeah.
But we had a great time with it.
It felt a little, the one moment, I'm not trying to shit on it because I really enjoyed it, but man, when he told the pizza delivery guy story at the end, and just, he told it, and like, you guys didn't even react to it. I was like, ooh, hurry up and play.
Yeah. You know, it's like, it's one of those things like a comedian on stage, and like, a tough crowd, man.
Yeah.
Tough crowd. My bandmates aren't even laughing.
Yeah. Question. Well, Joey, you know, it's no secret you are the busiest guy, I think, in the band. I mean, you obviously have Fate's Warning, and seems like every other band in the world seems to have a spot for you to play with them on a song here, a tour there, whatever. It seems like you stay busy. So how do you and the band come up with and decide when it's time to do Armored Saint? Is it just that somebody has a collection of songs they feel is right, or do you just get to a point where you're like, damn, we haven't done anything in X amount of years? How do you decide that, okay, it's time to prioritize this once again?
Yeah, well, you know, we've been on this weird 5-year schedule since 2010. And it's totally by chance, not planned out that way. It's just the way it's worked out. And so I think that this time it was, again, we couldn't have planned it this way. It was too arbitrary the way that the schedule worked out. But I think what happened this time, and every time it's a little different, but I think this time in particular, we came off the road. We had done, mind you, for Win Hands Down, we did a lot of touring. We did maybe more touring than we've done in like 25 years or 30 years or something. We did a lot of dates for that record. And so it was sometime around the end of 2017. I believe we were coming off maybe a Queensryche tour. We were supporting them. And we came off the road and we said, look, we told our agent, just don't look for any more dates. We're going to take some time off and decompress and see what happens. So that's where we left it. We didn't say to each other, let's stop and write a record. We just said, let's just take a break for a little bit. And so it was really only a couple of months after that I think I was probably doodling around. Mind you, I don't write on the road. I'm terrible at it. I much prefer to stop, chillax, decompress, right, and then open up and see what happens. So that's what I did and started fooling around with riffs or whatever. And I started out with a couple of things in December of 17. And then by January, February, probably have written 2 or 3 songs. And that's when I recorded demos and then I sent them off to John. And it's still, we haven't, even at that point, we hadn't said to each other, yeah, we're writing now. We still didn't do that. We still wanted to feel like natural. So he got really stoked on the first couple of songs. We got together, we made demos of 3 songs, probably finished them by March or something. And then at that point, we kind of looked at each other and said, oh, this is cool. Let's keep going, you know. And it was still only like, it might have been a couple of months after that even that we finally told the other guys, oh yeah, by the way, we started writing for the next record. You might want to send your ideas in. But you know, the process takes a long time with us. We didn't finish writing until the fall of 2019. Okay. So that's a long time. And that's pretty normal for us. That's been our trend in the last 15 years. We just, look, we don't have like a real schedule. We don't have a gun to our head from the label. We're not on a schedule for anything. They pretty much tell us, when you guys are ready and you have a record, let us know. And we're like, okay, that's amazing. You know, like to work in that with that freedom is like the best thing ever for us. Mm-hmm. So we take our time and we do it in between hockey practice and dropping the kids off at school and, you know, just family life and regular life, you know. So we just kind of do it whenever we find time to do it. And that's kind of why it takes 14 to 18 months to write a record for us. But that's in a nutshell kind of how it works.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah. And Joe, you know, I think one of the, you know, greatest attributes about Armored Saint is that you guys, you've practically had the same lineup now for, almost, you know, the 40 years of the band's existence. You know, even with Dave's tragic passing back in 90, you want to replace him with Jeff, who's still there now for the last 30.
Yeah.
You know, you don't see that too often where a band has the same members for that amount of time. And I know you guys have been friends, I know, since childhood, which explains obviously a lot of the tight bond between all you. But still, 40 years is 40 years. It's an amazing feat, regardless of the history, you know, and the dynamics of the band. What are some of the key, I guess, ingredients or, you know, things that has allowed you guys to really remain together, you know, through all those peaks and valleys? And because to me, it seems like there probably wouldn't be an Armored Saint at all if for some reason one of the 5 of you weren't there.
Well, that's true, and all of what you said is right on the money, pretty much. And I guess first thing I'll say is it ain't easy. That's for sure.
Sure.
Especially when you've had guys in the band who have known each other since we were 8 years old.
Wow.
That's insane. So
Yeah, it is.
our connection, we're like brothers and like family. And as anybody knows, if anyone's done any kind of business with a family member, it's like the worst thing ever. It's very difficult. Like slight little insults cut to the core, man. It, it hurts. So those things are the things you have to be careful with. You have to respect that we are greater than our sum. The sum is greater than we are. I rather was mean to say. So we have to have respect for the Armored Saint name, and we try to keep that clear. We try to respect each other, and everyone's look. When we were 19 years old, when we first started out, we were like all cut from the same cloth. We were the same. We were like this little tribe, this little gang. Over the years, though, honestly, some of us got married, some of us moved away out of town, and our lives changed, and some of our interests changed. So this is true for us too. We are different people now than we were when we were 19 years old, but we have this lineage that we always try to remember, and that's the Armored Saint music and the name. So that thing is something that you really got to respect, and you got to hold it. You got to hold it really dear and just pay respect for it. I mean, It would be a drag if it got nasty and like one guy in the band said, "I'm leaving and I'm taking the name," and then it was like John Bush or something, like John Bush and like 4 other guys you never even heard of, and he's calling it Armored Saint. That would just be the worst thing ever. And John would be the first one to tell you that too. I'm just using him as an example, but if any of us did that, it would just be awful. So it's like I said, it's not an easy thing, but we are proud of the fact that we have that, that unit is intact, and we take pride in having that.
No, absolutely. And I'm also hearing great things about Armored Saint, the movie that's due to come out sometime, I believe, in the near future as well. Me and Chris, our good friend, and my Shockwave Skull Sessions partner, Bob Nalbandian, he's featured. He said to say hi to you, by the way. He knew you were coming on tonight. But
hi, Bob.
But
way back with Bob. That's cool.
Yeah, he talks about you guys all the time, man. But unlike a lot of documentaries that we do see these days, yourself and the rest of the band, you guys aren't really directly tied to the film, from what I hear. I mean, you've obviously participated in it, but it's not really being funded or driven by the band. That's correct, right?
Yeah. The truth is that the idea came to us from a friend of ours, who's a longtime friend of ours and a fan also, but his name is Russell Charrington, and he's from the UK. He's a film he was a film student for many years. Him and I worked on some of his indie films. I wrote some music for his shorts and stuff, and then he went on to become a teacher, a professor at a film school. So he's like just all about film, and he's so into it. So he came to us with this idea a couple of years ago, and I said, we all said, that's awesome. If you want to tell the story, that's cool. And then, along the way, in further discussions, I kind of had to, I gave him my opinion from my point of view. Was I said, look, I don't want us to micromanage this because this should be your story. This should be your interpretation of what you want to say. Otherwise it's a movie that we're making about ourselves. Like, hey, look how cool we are.
Sure, yeah.
I don't want to do that. So, he's been doing a great job. We, of course, are involved we've done tons of interviews with him, and we supplied him with all kinds of media, old footage and photos and flyers and all kinds of stuff. And we hooked him up with people that were kind of in our network that he could go interview as well, Bob being one of them. He talks with our first manager, Cliff Bernstein from Q Prime. He talks with he talks with Lars and with James from Metallica, obviously. He talks with Scott Ian. He talks with Ron Lafitte, who was a early friend of ours. A couple of our producers, Max Norman is in there.
Okay.
So it's I haven't actually seen anything. All I've seen is the same trailer that all of you have seen. So I haven't really seen anything much. But from what I gather, he's finishing up in the editing stages, and I think that he's hoping to get it out in the spring, like finished. And I don't know what he's going to do with it, to be honest with you, but I think he's trying to get it done by spring, and so hopefully the rest of the world can check it out. And it should be a really cool thing for fans. You know, there's probably a lot of stuff that people don't know about our story, and you know, it should be cool.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, Joey, you know, as we mentioned before, you obviously play in Fates Warning as well, and new Fates Warning release, which we won't get too far into, other than I'll tell you it's the best thing you guys have done in 20 years. It's
wow.
It's an amazing listen. And,
cool. Thank you.
And I'm curious for you, you know, looking at Armored Saint and Fates Warning, Armored Saint is more of a grittier metal band, you know, where Fates Warning is much more of a virtuoso type of a band, which kind of says that you as a player are a virtuoso that can play gritty music. You know, how do you balance your playing between the grittier side and the more developed progressive style that you bring to Fates Warning?
Well, I'm a firm believer as a player, I'm a firm believer of the song will dictate what it needs. So I have known that for a long time, even before I was in Fates Warning. And so I know as a bass player anyway, it's my job to, what does the song need? Give what the song needs, and don't give it too much more, you know, because now you're being selfish, you know.
Right.
And I don't want to be a selfish player like that at all. I always want to serve the song. So whatever the song is asking for, that's what it gets. You know, Armored Saint music is obviously, like you pointed out, it's much more grittier and it's more simplistic in that way, more Neanderthal, we can say, which is cool. I mean, that's fine. That's where the energy and the aggression comes in, you know.
Right.
And when I joined Fates Warning in '96, you know, I was a different bass player then. I really had to, you know, up my game. I had to improve. I had to just get better. And at that time, I was working with Mark Zonder, who was the drummer on A Pleasant Shade of Gray. And that was like a huge learning curve for me to get on board with that band. And Fates has made me a better player. It's made me a better songwriter. It's made me more knowledgeable about how to use the theory that I know. So, you know, that's where I think the separation comes into play in my mind. Like, to answer your question is, you know, I mean, there's a lot of times in Fates music where the bass should be simple, and it is, and it should be that, because it's got to serve the song and the parts, you know. But it's like when it comes time to fly, you got to have your shit together, you know. And like I said, this was something I kind of learned by being in Fates Warning. I wouldn't necessarily say I was up to par when I first joined in '96. So I've been going to the Fates Warning School of Bass for almost 22 years or something right now.
Right.
Something like that.
And I would imagine tag teaming with Bobby makes you stay at the top end of your game.
God.
He's ridiculous.
Oh my God. I've played with some great guys through Fates, Nick D'Virgilio as well.
Yeah.
Portnoy did a few shows with us. I mean, Bobby, I'm playing with Bobby for like, I don't know, 10, 15 years now. It's like, and I mean, insanity. It's totally insane. So you really gotta, it's challenging, man. You gotta really think. You gotta be on point, and it's not always easy. But all those guys I mentioned, they're all amazing in their own way, and I've taken something from each one of them that's different, and it's been a great run.
No question, man. Well, Joey, I as a fan, and again, I'm a fan. You know, I have noticed, and I'm sure you've heard it or people have said it to you.
It wasn't me.
No, but the stock of Armored Saint seems higher than it's ever been before. Just seems like the band is just transformed into you know, one of the elite bands that when people start talking about metal now, from classic metal that came up from the 80s and whatnot, Armored Saint is one of those bands that gets mentioned more and more. And I know it probably has some things to you guys' ties with Metallica, and it has obviously John with Anthrax and whatnot. You know, the pieces parts have raised, but for whatever reason, Armored Saint, the profile has been raised. Do you guys revel in that, or do you wish that just more people would have figured it out when they were buying records in the late 80s and early 90s and giving you a platinum record?
I don't know. It feels pretty sweet right now, actually. And I think what you're saying, you're not the first person who said that to me. I don't necessarily think that I believed that. I am much more modest in how I see ourselves, but I do think that there is a little bit of truth to that now, especially now. Mm-hmm. I don't know why that is, but there might be a lot of reasons for it. But to answer your question directly, it feels pretty good. You know, it feels pretty good. Let me rephrase that. It feels great,
right? That
40 years into our career, right, that there's a lot of fans and critics too that are enjoying what we're doing, and they want to hear new music from us. Mm-hmm. They don't. It's not like they discounted everything after Symbol of Salvation and that's it. You know, like right. that was their last record, and I can't listen to anything after that. You know, it's almost the opposite in a way, where people are like looking forward to the music that we're making, and the response has just been pretty overwhelming. And for us to know this or to feel this 40 years in is sure. like completely mind-blowing. This is, to us, this is success. We never imagined 40 years ago that we'd be today talking about a new record that everyone's, you know, seems to be loving, and, you know, getting on top 10 lists and #1 records of the month or whatever. I mean, it's beyond what we ever imagined, you know. Mm-hmm. The reason, I'm not sure why there's a resurgence or a renaissance of sorts. It might have partly due to the fact that maybe we've been consistent, like in the mm-hmm. last, well, again, 5 years apart, consistent, but right. We've released 3 records in the last 15 years. We've done a lot of touring in that time also. In the 80s, we missed so many opportunities, especially in Europe. We never even toured Europe at all in the 80s. And that was a big travesty for us. It's a big thorn in our side. And so ever since 2001, when we got back together for Revelation, we made it a mission to go to Europe and to spend sure. as much time there as we could, and just be a touring act and let people see us live on stage. So I think that those things we've kind of like piecemealed and worked our way through the past 20 years, recent 20 years mm-hmm. of just being in people's faces and making new music. And I think getting better at songwriting. I mean, I don't want to pat myself too hard on the back, but we feel like we're making music that is good. I mean, we like it, mm-hmm. and we're happy with what we're doing. Sure. The response seems to be great. So I think all those things kind of combined together has made it seem like we have this resurgence of sorts. And maybe the internet's part of this too, because you got to remember that too, because before that we didn't really have any presence on the internet at all. Mm-hmm. So there's that part of it too. Social media plays a big part in it, and sure. You know, there's that too. So, but it's great. It's awesome. It's great.
I would definitely agree with you about the internet too. I know with my other show, the Classic Metal Show, Armored Saint's a core band. I mean, it's a band that's requested pretty much every week. We're playing stuff every week, and we're not just playing Can You Deliver and, you know, the old stuff. We're definitely playing Left Hook from Right Field, and we're playing, you know, the brand new stuff that we have, you know, Sail on the Shoulder Giants and stuff like that. I mean, great. And that's by request. That's not us just saying, okay, we got to pump this new Armored Saint record. It's the fans hear it and they want to hear it.
That's great.
But I do think that the internet, I think for you guys, the one negative that you had back in the late 80s and the 90s was just straight up exposure. I mean, other than Symbol, I'll be honest, I discovered you from Symbol, from MTV, and from, you know, people playing it around me. But you know, the first I've discovered the other albums after I discovered Symbol, which is how I think most people did. This current generation, the last 20 years of people, the 30-year-olds and back, they're not having to find you anymore. You're on Spotify, you're on you know, the web. There's videos on YouTube, and you know, you get into the playlists, or you get into the XM, you know, thing of the day or whatever. And I just think that has really helped people realize that there was this stable, great band that maybe they missed the first time around.
Yeah. And, you know, kudos too has to go to our label, Metal Blade. You know, we have a long history with them, and, you know, they're very savvy these days, and they've rolled with with the punches with new technology and streaming and all this stuff. So they've been a big part of that as well. But what you're saying is true. I mean, it's funny because when we came out of the gate in '84 with March of the Saint, you know, we were just a bunch of punks. I mean, we were 20, 21 years old. We got a major label deal. We hadn't even played 50 gigs yet in our entire lives. And then we're on this major label, and we spent stupid amounts of money on this record. And we've lost control, basically. We had all these people putting their hand on us, and managers and people at the label, like, you should do this, you should do that. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. You can't go to Europe. You don't make money. It's a loss. So we're not going to Europe. And we were like, what? What? So, but it's funny because March of the Saint came out, and it actually did really well for a sophomore effort. For a first record, it did great. But then, you know, it was like, as soon as something changed at MTV, like MTV back then was the be all end all.
Right.
And as soon as their rotation, I mean, their genre, they're playing metal changed between 84 and 86. And suddenly it was like, oh, it was kind of hard to get on MTV at that point. And then that was just, we went dark. We just went like completely dark. And the label, you know, didn't know what to do with us, or manager didn't know what to do with us. And then that's when we kind of started to get into obscurity, and we stayed in obscurity pretty much until Symbol of Salvation. Because when Symbol came out, if you remember, MTV was a thing then.
Sure.
And the Headbangers Ball was a thing. And we got a lot of airplay for Rain of Fire, our first video, got a lot of airplay. So we benefited from that at that moment. But then, of course, you know, as luck would have it, other things happened. John left to join Anthrax, and the band, whatever, we fell apart internally, and the rest is history. But you guys watch the movie to find out the rest.
There we go.
Nice. There we go. Well, Joe, I just got one more question for you, Joey. You're going back to your playing. You fingerpick your bass, which is universally been looked down upon within sort of metal circles over the years. I mean, I could probably count on one hand probably the number of metal bassists that fingerpick, by Steve Harris, Frank Bello, Robert Trujillo, maybe Geezer Butler. I mean, those are just the four I could think off the top of my head. In fact, and a lot of metal bands won't even allow a lot of finger picking bassists into the fold. You know, I mean, and it really has nothing to do, I think, with the sound. It's more the way maybe they don't like the way it looks, right? Because it's never been sort of considered a metal look, I guess. What's your opinion on that? Why do you think that is? Why do you think bands don't want to have finger picking bassists in their band? You know, they just don't.
Know. That's a good question.
You know?
I guess I always sort of associated it with, you know, I sort of feel like that started around when the thrash movement came up, and bands were getting away from sounding and looking like Iron Maiden, and they were getting closer to. Then the thrash thing was taken off, and it was a different thing. It's funny though to mention thrash, because Metallica pretty much was one of the forefront runners, and who played bass? Cliff Burton, but with his fingers. But it's funny and interesting to note though that a lot of bass players after that played with picks, and I think I always associated it with that the band wanted it to sound more like guitar, like the bass player just had to mimic what the guitar player was doing, and I think that they felt like it made the riffs sound more aggressive, I guess, if you will. And that's what I thought the reason was. I didn't really think that it was an aesthetic thing, but you might be right about that too. Like, you know, you don't want some like really heavy thrashy guy, you know, band with killer riffs, and then you got this bass player who's holds his bass up really high, and he looks like a jazz guy, you know. Like, that's not gonna fly.
Yeah,
it is. I mean, you know, it's not to say that you can't have that, because there's a lot of bands that are really heavy, you know, like Between the Buried and Me is a good example. I mean, those guys are super heavy and awesome and great, and their bass player plays with his fingers, and he's a great player. He's amazing. They're all amazing.
Sure.
But, you know, I don't know. That is a funny thing. I think maybe there might have been some of that in the 80s, maybe, like, and maybe in the early 90s, you know, like bands that were coming up, and there's like, you're not playing with your fingers, you know. The riff goes like this, and it plays with a pick, you know. And I have no problem playing with a pick. I mean, I use a pick once in a while. I use a pick on Standing on the Shoulders of Giants on the record.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
And I did it because maybe on this conversation, I felt like it added. I was trying to go for a Phil Lynott feel in that song. So Phil played with a pick, and I love Phil. He's a great bass player, but he has this kind of feel to it. So I tried it with my fingers while I was recording, and it just wasn't doing it for me. I'm a guitar player too, so I can play with a pick. So I grabbed my pick, and I said, oh, this feels way better, you know. I don't really need to do it live, but when I was making the record, I felt like it added something aesthetically to the sound that was better for me.
Sure.
Okay. Sure. Great.
Don't pay Matt any mind, Joey. He just put you in the same category as Steve Harris, Cliff Burton, and
hey,
I'd say that's a good.
Oh yeah.
Well, I play bass and I use my fingers, so it's all good. You know?
Yeah, but you know, I've been playing with fingers for such a long time that for me, I personally prefer fingers over pick. But that's just my preference, you know. The way that I feel the bass guitar and the way that it works with the drums, specifically the kick drum and the snare drum, I feel more fluid with fingers. The pick for me is meant for other things, such as what I explained about Giants, or if there's like an AC/DC kind of vibe and it's just like chunking eighth notes or something, give me the pick. You know, I'll pull out the full-on Cliff Williams and go for it, you know.
Sure.
Like I said earlier, like whatever the song wants, the song gets.
Right.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt. Well, thanks, Joey, so much for coming on. And for our listeners out there, obviously, 2 days from now, October 23rd, this Friday, Punch in the Sky comes out on Metal Blade. Everybody check it out. Are you guys planning on any other like live streams or doing any of that in the future?
You know, we actually had a really good time with it. That we have loosely talked about doing it again, especially if there's no opening up on the horizon. Like, how long are we going to wait before we're going to start booking some shows? You know, like we could be waiting until December, and then I don't know, we could be waiting forever. Sure. So we loosely talked about doing it again, since we had such a good time with it. You know. We could play, we only played like an hour and 10 minutes or something, an hour and 15 minutes. So we could do a whole other set of 12 completely different songs, and it would be different and it would be cool. So if we do something, it would be something along those lines. And yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility. We might do that.
Very cool. All right.
Yeah.
We'll look out for it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me. It's been a blast, and thank you.
Yeah, right, appreciate it, Joey. Thanks so much for coming on, bud.
Cool. Thank you, too.
Right, take care, everybody.
You guys be safe.
You too. Thanks.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Joey Vera.
Joey Vera. That was great. Yeah.
Well, that worked out pretty good considering we were both freaking at 7:30.
Well, yeah, when they both came in at the same time, I was like, who do you pick?
Well, I knew that John Connolly had things to do, but I was like, oh man, I hope Joey doesn't get annoyed. You know, annoyed.
Yeah.
I was like, no matter who I pick, somebody's going to be annoyed.
Pissed off. Yeah. Well, I guess since it was John's birthday, you probably give him the birthday present going first.
I knew he had somewhere to be, so
Yeah.
I made a call, and it looks like I made the right call. So
sure, yeah, no, it worked out. Yeah, so that was great. Yeah, but yeah, that Armored Saint really, that album is really awesome. I definitely encourage everyone to go check that out for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 3 great guests tonight. 3 records people should check out. Of course, Sammy Boller. What was his Kingdom of the
Sun?
Kingdom of the Sun. And then God, I'm so bad with the names now because I'm all digital. So
Blood and Stone, Sevendust, Blood and Stone.
Blood and Stone, and then Punch the Sky. Punching the Sky is the new Armored Saint. So good stuff there, man.
Yeah, you just said something pretty interesting, man. It's true, actually. I do forget, when you don't have that CD or that record in your hand, it's like, and you're just streaming everything through Spotify or whatever. It's true. It's like people they don't know either names of songs or the album titles because of it. It's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. I never know the names of anything anymore. It's funny because when I'm doing CMS, Neely's like, "Oh, go ahead and pick a song off the new record." And I'm like, and I almost universally answer play track, whatever. Because that's all I know it as is like track 5, track 2, track 3, whatever.
Yeah. True.
So, but yeah, no, I'm real happy with the way this went tonight. This was a fun, fast episode of Aftershocks.
Yeah, well, like you said, and we got the guests were just pretty darn good. You know what I mean? So when you get those great guests, it goes real fast. And you get guys too that have so much experience in the industry. I mean, John Connolly's been around for 30 plus years. When he, I was so happy he talked about that Peace Dogs. I don't know if you ever heard that, but if you haven't, check it out. It's pretty. You have okay.
Let me tell you, not only have I heard the record, but if we would have had more time, I would have told him. Him and Propane did a meet and greet that I put on.
Oh, really? Okay.
At a club called the Blind Pig in Cleveland, and it was like a pizza party for fans of. It was like propane. It was the propane pizza party. It was the
PPP
propane pizza party, and those guys came. And the deal was that everybody that came that won tickets or whatever got pizza, and I wasn't aware that band was coming, but they just came with Propane because they all shared the same van. So they all showed up, and clearly nobody had fed them wherever they were previously. Okay. And they came in and scarfed all the fucking pizza before one fan got there, like 6 pizzas, and they ate all of it before the show. Before the fans came, I ended up having to go into my pocket like $50 to buy more pizza for the fans because they ate all the pizza like that.
Wow.
But yeah, that's my memory of the pizza.
Yeah, the pizza dogs. You're shooting the pizza dogs.
The pizza dogs on the propane pizza party.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But that was great when you got guys like him and Joey Vera. I mean, Joey Vera's been obviously in the business for years. Sure. You got to have no short of just a great conversation with these guys.
It's amazing to me. He downplayed it, and I won't downplay it. The ability to transition between a band like Armored Saint and the band like Fate's Warning is gigantic. Yeah. And there's probably not 10 guys on the planet that can do it, especially in the position that he does, because, I know a lot of people are like, oh, the bass player, he's barely in the band. But you know what? In prog, in progressive metal, the bass is a huge part of it.
Sure.
And it's completely a different dynamic to their value within a straight metal band like Armored Saint. To be able, not so much to play it. I think anybody could play one or the other, but to be able to just have that muscle memory to just turn it on and off. I don't envy him, man. That's got to be difficult.
Well, like he was saying, he had to up his game back when he joined them in '96.
Yeah.
So he obviously worked hard at, taking it, and being able to, divert between the both of them. But no, I agree with you. Yeah. I mean, he's a great bassist. He is.
And I mean, the players in Fate's Warning are no joke, Bobby Jenzarbek. Jeez, oh man.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They're no joke. Yeah.
That guy. And then he said, oh yeah, Mike Portnoy sat in. It's Mike Portnoy.
Sat in. Yeah.
Sat in. All right. Well, yeah. Well, one of the top 5 greatest drummers in the world. Well, he checked.
I know.
And
Just got checked in. Yeah.
Virgil's another one that's
sure.
Unbelievable. And Mark Zonder's a great guitar player. And, Alder's a great singer. I mean, that's a talented band.
Oh, it is. Yeah. I agree.
Like, I wouldn't want to be the guy that's the worst player in that band.
I know, right?
Or maybe I would, because then I'd be qualified for every other band. But
sure. All right. Well, let's go quickly before we bust out of here. The lineup next week.
Next 2 weeks.
Next 2 weeks from today. Sorry.
2 weeks from now, we have another triple header, but this time 2 from one band, which is going to be nice and easy and convenient. First off will be guitarist Byron Nemeth. He is going to be checking back in. He's been with a number of bands. He has a new solo release getting ready to come out, or I think it is out actually. And then the guys from Death Dealer are going to be checking in with us. Awesome. Vocalist Sean Peck, and from Manowar fame, and a bunch of other bands that you're aware of, Ross the Boss.
Yeah,
will be on with us as well. So another good issue of Aftershocks Tremors live in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. We got the one after that. We already got a couple of guests booked. We'll talk about that, in the next episode. And yes, can't wait. Looking forward to it. This was fun tonight. And I guess it's time to bust out.
All right. Well, then we will see you guys in 2 weeks, and make sure you check us out on aftershockstv.com to get all the other interviews. At least twice a week.
That's all right. All right. See everybody in 2 weeks.
All right. See you, folks.
Thanks for listening to Aftershocks. For more episodes, go to our website at www.aftershockspodcast.com. Visit us on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for more news and information on the podcast. And be sure to subscribe, listen to, and review all episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other podcast platforms. For your music listening pleasure, visit our website or go to www.shockwavesradio.com. For all comments and questions, please email us at info@aftershockspodcast.com.